So we need to talk about gluten. Yes, that gluten, and specifically gluten-free baked goods. I was at the grocery store recently and I came across a couple of gluten-free cake mixes made by your typical cake mix manufacturers. And that signaled to me that they are ready to get in the game. I'm used to seeing King Arthur and Bob's Red Mill gluten-free baking mixes on the shelf. And the new ones are a welcome addition. Gluten-free cake mix are amazing, and that is because they make cake accessible to more people. But if you're making a gluten-free cake or cupcakes for someone and you're not gluten-free, there are a few things that you need to be mindful of. So you may be wondering, what is gluten? Gluten is a protein that naturally occurs in certain cereal grains, and this includes wheat, barley, and rye, to name a few. Gluten is a structural protein, and that is what makes dough doughy. At the time of this video, gluten is not considered an allergen. However, if you look at the ingredient list and you see wheat listed, that is an indicator that this item contains gluten. Because flour is used extensively in baking, wheat flour particularly, gluten can become an issue. If you're making a gluten-free baked good, keep in mind there are other ingredients besides the cake mix that you must be mindful of, and make sure that those too are gluten-free. Many non-stick baking sprays contain flour, so they can't be used for prepping pans. Instead, look for gluten-free baking sprays like this one, or prepare your pans with parchment paper like this. Using a gluten-free cake mix is easy because it takes the guesswork out of the baking part. However, you must also be sure that your flavorings, colorings, and pan prep are gluten-free. Other flours are used in gluten-free baking. The most popular ones are almond flour, sorghum flour, arrowroot flour, and oat flour. The first thing you want to do is look at the packaging. Look at the ingredient list and ensure that wheat is not listed. You want to use ingredients that are clearly labeled gluten-free. If the item specifically does not claim to be gluten-free, make sure you contact the manufacturer to ask those questions. So when in doubt, leave it out. Subscriber and fellow baker Candace of The Lovely Baker shared recently that she has a gluten sensitivity and has some helpful tips for gluten-free baking. Be careful of cross-contamination, which I mentioned earlier in this video. Candace also shares that gluten-free batter can be mixed longer than batter made with all-purpose flour. Because gluten-free batter lacks gluten, the proteins do not build up to create super dense baked goods that are harder to chew. Remember, gluten is what makes dough doughy. Another tip that Candace shares is that extra baking powder is needed to make gluten-free batter rise properly. Finally, she shares the biggest misconception, and that is cakes and other gluten-free pastries are dry and don't taste good. But as long as you start with a good recipe, you won't have this issue. Candace, I couldn't agree more. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to my channel for more cake decorating tips, tricks, and tutorials. And as always, thanks for watching.